Hello everyone, it's Jin'taan here, and once again it's time to get you up to speed with exactly what's been going on in EVE Online, this time covering the 2nd and 3rd weeks of September. Now I wasn't able to put together a video last week as I ended up travelling to the G-Fleet meetup in Berlin to report on that event, and you can read my full coverage at mmorpg.com. Unfortunately, that also meant that I've spent the past week trying my best to catch up with other video and real life commitments, so I haven't been able to do quite as many interviews or spend as much time researching as I'd like, but far too much has happened over that period for me not to report on it. First of all, a huge announcement was made in Berlin, with CCP revealing that the Blackout will be drawing to a close on Monday the 16th of September. We've also seen massive amounts of action and, more importantly, movement in the front between Winter Coalition and Legacy in the southeast, as Norris laid out his plans for the future of the war as Legacy's assaults on Detorid intensified. Meanwhile, in Wormholes, we saw a Keepstar and a Class 2 belonging to Nomex fall to a coalition of Inner Hell, Laserhawks and Hardknocks. There's also been scattered action across basically the entire map, with dread bombs of varying effectiveness being dropped in Gemina and Esoteria, what looks like it could be the start of a border skirmish between PanFam and Dead Coalition in Tenal, and spies being used to secure multiple Titan kills in Delve, alongside a myriad of other minor conflicts that we covered later on. So strap yourselves in folks, and don't forget to jump into either the Discords or the comments below if you think that I've missed something important. So for the past 66 days the Blackout has been in effect in EVE Online, removing the normal functions of local and replacing them with the system found in Wormhole space, and over the course of its existence it's probably been one of the most hotly debated topics within the community. It even saw wide coverage in the mainstream gaming press, and I both reported on it in my news video at the time, and also made an effort to get out there myself in space and see what it was all about with some rare footage of me actually playing the game that you can check out by clicking the little card thing in the top right. The wording of the initial announcement itself made it sound at once both temporary and potentially permanent, with the wonderfully weaselly word of indefinite being used to describe its length. But given how long it had been in effect, most groups had begun to accept it as the new norm, with coalitions like the Imperium attempting to institute new organisational features to counteract the harm they perceived it to be doing to their community. As such, the wider EVE community expected some discussion about the Blackout from CCP's perspective at EVE Berlin, and what we got was, well, I'll simply show you.
Talking about the Blackout, how long it will last, what will happen next is kind of unclear. But there's a saying in Iceland, if you don't like the weather, you just wait 5 minutes. Or in case for you, Monday. That's when Blackout is out. No more Blackout from Monday.
Should be fun.
Yeah, it should be fun. Let's see what happens next.
Now after this announcement I did have a chance to sit down with CCP Falcon and ask a few questions about this decision, and he had the following to say about why CCP was rolling back the changes. Quote, "I think it's a combination of wanting to look at the Cyno changes in isolation, also the fact that the Blackout has been going on for some time now and we feel we have the right amount of data. We had a discussion around it lately with the strategy team where we asked, do we have enough data now, is there anything else we want to learn? Now we can take a look back at this and look at player behaviour after." End quote. Now considering that I have an article on the back burner right now with the working title Lies, Damned Lies and Statistics, I'd hesitate to come to any conclusions from a few simple data points, but it's undeniable that the PCU has begun to steadily climb back up after the reversion to the base state of local, so make of that what you will. The Cyno changes that were discussed briefly in my last news update also came into effect with the 10th of September release, which restricts Cynos to only being able to be fit on Force Recons and Black Ops battleships, with some minor tweaks from the original announcement in order to allow Cynos on more disposable ships for jump freighters to utilise in response to community feedback. Most Nullsec groups reacted to this by putting a temporary stop to supercapital ratting over the course of that week, whilst testing new response stratagems on Rorquals, which are both less expensive to lose and more lenient to defend as a result of the Panic module giving them longer windows to bring Cynos onto the field. After that week-long ban was over, it seems that most have returned to their crabbing ways, but with more stringent requirements introduced to both fittings of ratting ships and what players making ISK need to have on standby to act as a deterrent. Ignoring these rules, the first Titan to die as a result of these changes came only 3 hours after they were implemented. Whilst he had a Falcon ready to bring his friends in, he warped it into bubbles on the grid and lost it before any response fleet could form up to save him. We even saw the Imperium kill a group of their own Rorquals after being caught by Marshy's group of Delve Hunters and finding out that they were incorrectly fit, which is something that I just had to mention. Across the board, the default adaptation to these changes seems to be just having a Cyno recon cloaked in system in preparation for being dropped on, which complicates the escalation chain to a degree, but also could potentially give PvE players a way to get around the use of offensive Cyno inhibitors, as those only remove the ability to Cyno in a 100 km range, meaning that a Cyno recon warped in at 100 km from the tackled target may in fact be able to bring in reinforcements despite its presence. As of now, however, the impacts on both PvE and PvP are entirely unclear, and I'll do my best to keep an eye on how the metagame evolves in response to the change, and keep you updated in future news videos. Refocusing on the game proper rather than on the development surrounding it, we have our next headline story, the continuation of the Winter vs Legacy war in the southeast. Now, fighting between the two groups has continued to sprawl over a wide range of regions, as Scalding Pass, Omist, Tenerifis, Immensity and Torrid all found themselves host to relatively large battles over the past 2 weeks. One of the biggest shifts in the balance of power here that I can't place a date to unfortunately is Legacy's successful placement of a Fortizar in the Winter Coalition staging system of O3 TAC, giving them a place where capitals can be staged from in order to potentially allow a siege of the Keepstar Winter has in that system, which has served as Winter Coalition's super capital staging point for some time. The first major clash between Winter and Legacy of the fortnight came in impasse, after an Imperium bomber and Kiki fleet was able to tackle a group of Requiem Eternal Rorquals in 4RS TAC L1. A small squad of Dreads was jumped into the system, seemingly to try and secure these kills, which was responded to by Legacy dropping their super capital hammer on the problem. Those Dreads turned out to be in reality bait for that very response, and a force of 66 Dreads ended up escalating the fight, focusing in on the weakly supported shield super capital component of the predominantly armor response from Legacy. This Dread bomb consisted of both members of the Imperium and Winter Coalition, as well as Snuffed Out, who have recently moved into the theatre from their previous deployment in the northern region of Fade, seemingly to assist Winter, although I've been unable to confirm that at the current time. And collectively they were able to kill 2 Ragnaroks and a Hell, before the weight of DDs and fighter bombers took their toll and reduced the DPS on grid to a sustainable level, allowing Legacy to stabilise. All in all, this ended up with the Imperium, Winter and Snuff group losing 128 billion and killing 217. Moving over to the border region of Tenerifis, Winter continued their efforts to attack the SOV of the FI.RE coalition, this time attacking the low ADM system of BTAC-6 STA and reinforcing its iHub along with several others. As this system is part of a linear pocket with only one way in and out of it via gates, the two fleets quickly ran into one another, although Legacy was able to bypass the potential choke point of 7K1K TAC-H using their jump bridge network to enter the constellation via OP TAC. A bloody sub-capital fight ensued, with the two Munin fleets clashing whilst Entosis ran around the constellation trying to secure nodes for their respective groups, but ultimately Legacy was able to secure both the field and the objective, with the iHub remaining in the hands of FI.RE, and the fight costing Legacy 19 billion to Winter's losses of 34 billion. Scenes like this were replayed over and over during the past couple of weeks, as Winter Coalition continued to make Tenerifis the focus of their offensive operations, whilst Army of Manco, the Legacy-aligned Chinese alliance, continued to bolster Legacy's support of FI.RE in defending the region. And that neatly brings us on to another shift that took place within the war over the past fortnight, as the Army of Mango leader Military Mantau and the current Winter Coalition leader Norus allegedly met to discuss the future of the informal non-aggression pact between the two, with AOM's defensive support of Legacy being the crux of the discussion. The end result of this, rather than a peaceful agreement between the two, was the declaration of mutual hostility between the two parties and the tearing up of that previous accord. This resulted in Legacy having more strength in the Chinese time zone when running offensive Intosis operations to take out key iHubs into Taurid, allowing more progress to be made in the theatre, with 4 more iHubs falling on the 19th of September. Following this, Vili made a public post on Reddit extending an offer for non-fraternity and non-cure members of the Winter Coalition to distance themselves from their current affiliation, claiming that Legacy held no intention to occupy Wicked Creek, Scalding Pass or Cache, and would allow them to remain in those regions after the conclusions of the war should they choose to accept his terms. This pretty obviously was an attempt to reduce the allies that Winter Coalition could bring to bear in the fighting by separating the interests of its smaller constituent alliances from the larger ones, potentially precipitating a collapse of the coalition. It's unknown whether any of those alliances intend to take him up on that offer, but it was met by accusations from the general public of Vili attempting to expand the quote-unquote Blue Donut. All of this built up to Norris's latest announcement to the coalition, his first one in a couple of months, which was sent out on Saturday the 21st. Thankfully for those of us who don't speak Chinese, this was quickly translated and posted to Reddit, and I'd encourage people who are interested in the Winter Coalition point of view on the war to read it, as it serves as an incredibly interesting look into how he both perceives the war strategically, and also a window into what the narrative is for the Chinese player base, which as Westerners who predominantly view Western platforms like Reddit and YouTube we rarely see, whilst the Chinese player base congregates on platforms like Baidu and Bilibili. But to summarise briefly, Norris congratulates his members on being able to hold Western Taurid for so long, characterising it as a wasteland due to the ease by which Legacy can disrupt the activity needed to keep its ADMs up. However, with the previously noted footholds acquired by Legacy in the region, holding it has now been deemed as untenable. As such, the Chinese-speaking parts of the coalition will retreat from O3 TAC to their secondary staging in the eastern half of the region in QRFJ, whilst the English-speaking components will be sent to Cache in order to allow them time to rat and keep their members in ISK, whilst continuing to defend the region of Innsmother to prevent Legacy from making gains there. Future offensive operations from Winter Coalition will now focus on the Army of Mango-held region of Omist, with the assumed but not stated intent to push a major source of numbers for Legacy's Chinese time zone fleets out of the war, in order to provide Winter Coalition future dominance of that time zone for defensive purposes. As in defensive structure and Intosis warfare, being able to control one time zone is all you need to do to be able to hold a front, as the defender has the ability to pick when fights are actually taking place. Norris then goes on to draw attention to the continued presence of the Imperium in supporting Legacy's operations in the war as a reason for their defences starting to crack, and bemoans PanFam's lack of aid for Intosis timers, as well as stating what he believes to be Legacy's reason for attacking them, that Legacy expects to fight a quote-unquote ultimate war against the Imperium, and wishes to remove the possibility of Winter taking part in that war as a pincer on their eastern flank. Following this announcement, Legacy and their allies set to work reinforcing a large section of Taurid, focusing on the western half of the region that was being officially retreated from, as well as hitting other regions of Winter Coalition space, setting up a wall of around 30 timers for Sunday, which would allow them to bring in players from across various time zones to the fight. In the end, out of the 20 timers that were generated in Taurid specifically, 16 of them were won by Legacy, whilst 4 of them were successfully defended by Winter. This leaves a huge number of new systems under Legacy control, after months of careful work to secure just a few footholds, showing just how quickly things can degenerate when it comes to Sov warfare. And, well, that's where the war stands right now. I anticipate more movement coming on this front over the next few weeks, as Legacy is likely to continue pressing their advantage into Taurid. I'll be particularly interested to see if a headshot in O3 TAC or QRFJ is attempted in order to try and bring a quick end to the war, or if a more conservative approach is taken. As it stands on Tuesday, it looks like the latter is more likely, as Legacy is just continuing to hit Fraternity with wall after wall of timers, 47 of them being launched over the next 3 days, probably attempting to stretch the coalition thin over several regions as they continue to push deeper into the region of Taurid. Our final headline story is the death of a Keepstar in the system of J150859, also known as Envy, a Class 2 wormhole. This means that the ships that you can bring through the holes that connect to this system are relatively mass limited, preventing people from bringing in capitals or large numbers of battleships, but not preventing them from being built inside the system. As such, C2 wormholes are considered to have an incredible defensive advantage, making sieging a structure like a Keepstar particularly hard. This Keepstar in particular belonged to Nomex, a wormhole alliance whose full name is Spatial Instability, and was named Vistine after a member of the group who'd passed away. Apparently the group had been preparing for an assault on their home for some time, but not from who eventually showed up, Inner Hell, backed up later by two other large wormhole groups in Hard Knocks and Laserhawks, and were able to maintain hull control and keep Nomex from bringing in any allies into the fight in a manner that was similar to that described in my video on the Mighty Bean's eviction. Ultimately, despite attempts to defend the Keepstar with a mixture of battleships and capitals, the attacking force of Bush Ravens, polarized bombers, and other ships were able to win the final timer and take down the Nomex defense fleet. In the end, this led to a nearly 500 billion ISK of losses, with only around 5 billion ISK being killed in return, making it by far the most expensive battle report of the fortnight, despite everything else that's happened over that period of time, and as such deserving of a mention so high up in the video. But equally deserving of a mention is the wonderful battle report that was put together discussing the fight from the loser's point of view, and also explaining how the Keepstar came to be in the first place, notably lacking in any salt quality and congratulating their opponents on a fight well fought. This only continues to reinforce my notion of wormholes as some sort of weird nega realm of EVE Online, where everyone is chill as hell. Beyond those main headlines, we have an awful lot of smaller stories to cover here, and considering I'm about 3,000 words into the script at this point, we're going to go through them relatively quickly and without covering a great deal of the details. If you want to read the battle reports that serve as the primary sources here and piece together some details for yourself, they, along with most of the sources used to compile this episode, are linked in the document posted in the description below. So, let's get into the side stories. First of all, in Gemina, we've seen the continuation of clashes between the Goon Special Interest Group deployed to the NPC space of the region, and the PanFam forces aiming to defend it, with PanFam regularly attempting to destroy the Goon citadels placed there. These fights have often escalated into capital brawls, with both sides throwing dreads at one another, as Geminat lies out of easy range of PanFam's Malpay-based supercapital umbrella. Examples of this include the brawl in Rua, which is on your screen right now, where Goons lost 78 billion and killed 74, as well as a fight that occurred the very next day in FDZ4 TAC A, which saw Goons lose 114 billion whilst killing 72. I'm not entirely sure what, if any, strategic purpose this fulfills, but honestly these fights look fun and I'm kind of jealous of those involved. Next in Esoteria we have more Imperium-based Dreadnought action, this time with them launching a dread bomb against a group of tackled test Rorquals just after the Cyno changes were brought in, presumably attempting to catch people unprepared to deal with them. Unfortunately for said dread bomb, not only did they have a Rapier on standby, but Vili himself was also present with a backup Cyno and a Falcon, and the Legacy Super Capital Hammer came down quickly, leaving the Imperium dread bomb only able to kill a single Rorqual before falling to the wave of Doomsdays from the Titans on field. In total, Legacy lost 5 billion ISK whilst killing 109. Meanwhile in Delve, a spy who was part of the Tactical Narcotics Team Alliance was able to infiltrate the squad command positions of the Imperium standing fleet in 1DQ, which had a sizable contingent of Titans as a part of it. Whilst most of them were wisely either docked or had exempted themselves from fleet warp, some hadn't, and as such the spy was able to warp off a small group of Titans who'd been mostly AFK. This then allowed Marshy's group of Delve hunters to drop a dread bomb on them, allowing them to kill two before a Imperium response arrived, leading to 184 billion in losses to the Imperium and 78 billion in losses for the assorted anti-Imperium forces. Moving all the way across the map from Delve to the northeast, we can see something particularly unexpected, at least by me, as Northern Coalition has begun to attack Combat Wombat Sov in Tinal. This territory used to belong to PanFam before the war in the north, which Dead Coalition used as an opportunity to attack Tinal whilst they were busy in tribute, claiming half of the region which hadn't previously fallen under their control. As of now, it's unclear just how serious these attacks are, with the defending alliance of Combat Wombat having lost the grand total of 1 ship in defense of SF TAC XJS, although a member of the Chinese alliance Veni Vidi Vici did reach out to me via email to discuss this, and I simply haven't had the time to get back to them. So if you're watching, sorry about that. Still, if this escalates, we could see a war between Dead Coalition and PanFam, along with their ex-HRE allies, in order to retake their half of Tino, or perhaps even more than that. Only time will truly tell, and I'll be keeping a close eye on this region. In decidedly less serious but still NC. Related news, one of their corporations, Burning Napalm, celebrated their 9th birthday in spectacular fashion, with a Leshak fleet accompanying a small squad of suicide titans roaming around Malpei. This quickly ran into a test Ferox fleet and a Darkness Naga gang, as well as a Pandemic Horde Ferox fleet which was cleared to shoot at them despite their blue standings, and ended with the destruction of 2 of the 4 titans fielded, along with a huge amount of Leshaks. Ultimately, the Vanquisher present managed to get itself safe, much to my own disappointment, but in total 340 billion ISK was sacrificed to the whelp gods. Happy birthday, Smell! To the west of Malpei in tribute, there's also been steady fighting between the various small groups that make up the post-glassing political fabric of the region. For full disclosure, I'm a member of one of those groups, specifically Trigger Happy, who in conjunction with Toxic and occasionally Project Gungnir have been fighting the Pure Madness coalition of Bandalogs and French Connection over a series of objectives, from content Astra houses to iHub timers. For now, it looks like neither side intends to push each other out, although I'm obviously biased in my perspective there, but I'll do my best to keep you up to date with any fights that develop. And hopefully I'll have a chance to actually sit down and get stuck into that fighting myself, in order to bring a first-hand perspective on what's going on, once I stop being hideously behind in my videos. And then finally we have the small battles that have been taking place in the Vale of the Silent, between the coalition of Forsaken Empire and Reverberation Project against the Theron Alliance. I haven't had the time to look into this properly and talk to those involved, but given that it's the kind of small-scale, independent, alliance-driven PvP that people often claim never happens in Nullsec, I feel obliged to at least mention it. Hopefully I'll be able to bring you some more details on this conflict in the future. A special thanks, as always, goes out to our Crassuses, Pinche Infidel from Old School and Brood, as well as to our other $5 patrons in Dustin Prater, Meeks, Czar, Olav Olden, Kem, Raphael, and Big Bada Boom. As well as to everyone else who supports the show, either by donating a smaller amount or just by sharing the links to other people who might be interested in my videos. Until next time, fly smart and don't forget, Nullsec is very stagnant and totally safe.